In the shadows of the night, three desperate souls seek refuge where they only find their destiny. The silence of a solitary house hides more secrets than words could ever reveal. What begins as a simple hideout will become the judgment they never expected to face. Before we begin, like and subscribe so we can keep creating stories like this one. As night fell on the outskirts of Pine Ridge, where the lights of the small rural town barely illuminated the distant horizon, three men walked determinedly through the underbrush. They had abandoned their car several kilometers back after a mechanical failure left them stranded on that lonely road. Jack Mercer, a man of robust build and penetrating gaze, led the group with determination. Behind him, young Tim Walker, barely 23, nervous and with a restless energy that made him constantly look back. Closing the march, Ryan Oakes, a middle-aged man with a serious and calculating expression, who had barely spoken a word since they began their journey. "Look up there," Jack pointed to a hill where a rustic house stood out. "It seems abandoned. We can take shelter there until tomorrow." The property stood solitary on the hill, surrounded by an unkempt garden and ancient trees that cast ghostly shadows under the moonlight. A stone fence, partially destroyed by time, defined the perimeter. Everything indicated it would be a perfect refuge to spend the night while waiting for help. "What if someone lives there?" asked Tim, nervously running his hand through his dark hair. "Then we'll ask for help like decent people," Ryan replied in a serene tone. "We just need a phone and perhaps a place to rest until dawn." Jack smiled with some malice. "If there's anyone, it'll surely be some lonely old man. These remote houses are always inhabited by elderly people who don't want to be bothered." The three men weren't simple lost travelers. They had escaped from a compromising situation in the city of Eastwood, where an unpaid debt and a heated argument had ended with Jack threatening the creditor. Now they were fleeing, fearing the consequences of that confrontation. As they approached the house, they noticed a faint yellowish light filtering through one of the side windows. Someone inhabited that property after all. Jack, without wasting time, knocked on the door firmly. Several minutes passed before they heard slow footsteps approaching from inside. The door opened with a creak, revealing an elderly man with a slightly hunched back and completely white hair. His eyes, however, shone with surprising clarity for someone his age. "Good evening," said the old man with a slow but firm voice. "How can I help you?" Jack quickly adopted an expression of concern. "Sorry to bother you, sir. Our car broke down on the highway and we got lost looking for help. Could you let us use your phone?" The old man observed them carefully, as if he were evaluating every detail of their faces. After a moment that seemed eternal, he nodded slightly. "My name is Edward Vance," he introduced himself as he opened the door wider. "I don't have a phone, I'm afraid. Years ago I decided to live without those modern conveniences. But you can spend the night here if you wish. Tomorrow morning you can walk to town. It's about 3 miles away." The three exchanged glances. The offer was perfect for their plans, an isolated place to temporarily hide, with a host who seemed harmless. The interior of the house was austere but orderly, antique but well-preserved furniture, walls adorned with black and white photographs, and a fireplace where the last logs of the night burned. Mr. Vance led them to the main living room, offering them seats while he prepared tea on an old wood stove. "Do you live alone here, Mr. Vance?" asked Ryan with genuine curiosity. "For almost 20 years now," the old man responded from the kitchen. "The people in town know me as the hermit on the hill. I rarely go down to town, only for essentials." While their host prepared the tea, Jack approached Tim and whispered, "When the old man falls asleep, we'll search the house. He must have something valuable stored away." Tim nodded nervously, while Ryan pretended not to have heard anything, focusing on the photographs on the wall. In them, a young Edward appeared alongside different people in various countries. In one particular photo, he was seen in military uniform. Mr. Vance returned with a tray and 4 steaming cups. "Herbal tea from my garden," he explained as he served. "It helps calm the nerves after a long day." While they drank the tea, the 3 visitors tried to obtain more information about their host, who responded politely, but without revealing too much. He mentioned having been an international security consultant before retiring, and having traveled extensively throughout Europe and South America. As the night progressed, Tim showed increasing restlessness, constantly looking toward the windows. Jack, for his part, studied the house with discretion, calculating possible valuable objects. Ryan remained quiet, carefully observing the interaction between Mr. Vance and his companions. Near midnight, the old man showed them 2 rooms where they could sleep. "Rest well, tomorrow I'll prepare breakfast before you leave," he said with a cordiality that contrasted with the penetrating look he directed at Jack. Once Mr. Vance had retired to his room, Jack gathered his companions in the hallway. "It's our opportunity," he whispered urgently. "The old man lives isolated. No one will know we were here. We'll search the house when he's deeply asleep." Ryan expressed his disagreement. "It doesn't seem right to me. He's offered us shelter." "Right?" Jack mocked. "Since when do you care about what's right? We're here because of you too, don't forget that." The tension between them was palpable. Tim, nervous as always, tried to mediate without success. Finally, they agreed to wait an hour to make sure the old man was asleep. What they didn't know was that Mr. Edward Vance remained awake, sitting on the edge of his bed, listening to every whisper they exchanged in the hallway. His eyes, now cold and calculating, didn't reflect the fragility he had pretended during the evening. With precise movements, he opened a small drawer in his nightstand and extracted an old metal key. While the 3 men planned their move, Mr. Vance remembered his past, a past he had tried to leave behind 20 years ago when he decided to retire to that house on the hill. A past full of covert missions, protecting diplomats and personalities in the most dangerous corners of the world. A past where he had learned to read people, just by looking into their eyes, to detect their intentions before they themselves were conscious of them. He knew perfectly well who his visitors were and what they intended. He had been observing them. Since they appeared on the path to his property, Mr. Vance smiled slightly as he turned the key between his fingers. The night had barely begun, and those 3 intruders had no idea what awaited them under his roof. Past midnight, when silence enveloped the house on the hill and only the occasional howl of a coyote in the distance could be heard, Jack signaled to his companions. It was time. With stealthy steps, the 3 gathered in the hallway, exchanging complicit glances. Tim trembled slightly, his youthful face contracted by nervousness. "Ryan, watch the hallway that leads to the old man's room," Jack ordered in a whisper. "Tim, come with me. We'll check the living room and the study." Without waiting for a response, Jack advanced down the corridor, while Ryan reluctantly took position near Mr. Vance's door. The interior of the house seemed different under the faint moonlight filtering through the windows. The furniture cast elongated shadows, and the photographs on the walls seemed to observe them with accusing eyes. In the main living room, Jack began to meticulously examine each drawer, each corner where there might be valuable objects. Tim, for his part, headed toward a library full of ancient books with what appeared to be valuable bindings. "Don't you find it strange?" whispered Tim as he ran his fingers along the spines of the books. "A solitary old man living in such a well-equipped house in the middle of nowhere." Jack shot him an irritated look. "Shut up and keep looking. The old man must have savings or some family heirloom." At that moment, a soft clearing of the throat startled them. Both turned quickly to find Mr. Vance, standing in the threshold of the living room, wearing a dark robe and holding an unlit cigar between his fingers. His posture was no longer that of a fragile old man. He stood completely straight, with a presence that filled the room. "It seems my guests are curious about my book collection," he said with a slow but firm voice. "Or perhaps you're looking for something more specific." Jack, quickly recovering from the surprise, pulled out a knife he had hidden. "Stay still, old man. We don't want to hurt you. We just need money to continue our journey." Mr. Vance didn't show even a hint of fear. With absolute calm, he placed the cigar in his lips and extracted a silver lighter from his pocket. "Do you mind if I smoke? It's a nightly ritual I never abandon. My last cigar of the day." The old man's tranquility disconcerted Jack, who unconsciously took a step back. Tim remained paralyzed next to the bookcase. From the hallway, Ryan approached cautiously, attracted by the voices. "Please sit down," Mr. Vance indicated, pointing to the armchairs as he lit his cigar. "If you're going to threaten me in my own house, at least let's do it comfortably." After inhaling deeply, the old man exhaled a column of smoke that ascended in spirals toward the ceiling, his eyes now completely alert and penetrating, fixed on Jack. "My house, my rules," he pronounced in a tone that admitted no reply. In that instant, without anyone noticing, Mr. Vance discreetly pressed a small button hidden in his lighter. A metallic sound traveled through the house, locks automatically, activating on doors and windows. The three intruders looked around, confused and alarmed. "What was that?" asked Tim with a trembling voice. "The sound of your fate being sealed, young man," replied Mr. Vance, walking toward a cabinet from which he extracted a bottle of aged whiskey and 4 glasses. "Now you're in my territory under my conditions." Jack, enraged, lunged toward the old man brandishing his knife. What happened next left Tim and Ryan petrified. With precise and fluid movements improper for his apparent age, Mr. Vance dodged the attack, gripped Jack's wrist, applying pressure to a specific point that made his fingers involuntarily open, releasing the knife. In a second movement, the old man twisted Jack's arm behind his back, completely immobilizing him. 20 years of retirement aren't enough to forget certain skills, he whispered in Jack's ear before releasing him with a push that sent him staggering toward the armchair. The silence that followed was absolute. The three men observed the old man with a mixture of fear and amazement. Mr. Vance poured whiskey into the 4 glasses with the tranquility of someone performing a daily task. "Drink," he offered, extending the glasses. "Fear is a poor companion. For the night ahead of us." Ryan was the first to accept the drink, recognizing that their situation had changed drastically. Tim followed, while Jack, humiliated but cautious, finally took his glass. "Who are you really?" asked Ryan, studying the old man's face. Mr. Vance smiled slightly. "I was known as the Watcher in certain diplomatic circles. Personal security for ambassadors, businessmen and politicians in conflict zones. I protected those who others couldn't or wouldn't protect." Tim, with wide-open eyes, intervened. "Like a bodyguard?" "Something more complex," replied Mr. Vance, sitting comfortably in his favorite armchair. "Let's say I specialized in anticipating threats, in studying human nature to prevent betrayals and conflicts, until one day, a miscalculation cost too much." His gaze was momentarily lost in some distant point, as if observing a painful memory. Then, regaining his composure, he continued. "I decided to retire here, far from the world I knew. But the world, curiously, continues finding ways to reach my door." Jack, regaining some of his confidence, blurted out, "And what do you plan to do with us?" "Turn us into the police." Mr. Vance slowly shook his head. "The police are looking for 3 men who threatened a moneylender in Eastwood. An unfortunate incident that escalated more than necessary. Isn't that right?" The 3 intruders exchanged surprised looks. How could he know that? "My retirement doesn't mean total isolation," explained the old man, as if reading their thoughts. "I have contacts, I receive information, and you 3 have been on my radar for some time." He stood up with fluid movements that completely contradicted the fragile image he had projected hours before. He walked to a painting on the wall, removed it, and revealed a small digital screen. He pressed several buttons, and a section of the floor slid open, revealing a staircase that descended to what appeared to be a basement. "Follow me," he indicated, descending the steps without looking back, confident that curiosity would prevail over prudence. After a moment of hesitation, the 3 men followed him, Tim first, then Ryan, and finally Jack, who was still chewing over his humiliation. The basement was a revelation, a spacious and surprisingly modern room, with multiple monitors showing different areas of the property and its surroundings. On the walls, work tables with communication equipment, detailed maps of the region, and in a corner, a small armory with personal security equipment. "Welcome to my true home," announced Mr. Vance, extending his arms. "From here, I've monitored." this region for years. I observe patterns, identify potential threats, and occasionally I intervene." The three visitors toured the place with amazement. Ryan examined the monitors. Tim seemed hypnotized by the maps where various points were, marked with detailed notes, and Jack studied the armory with special interest. "Why are you showing us all this?" Ryan finally asked, expressing the doubt all three shared. Mr. Vance sat in front of one of the monitors, his face illuminated by the bluish light of the screen. "Because each of you is here for a specific reason. It was no coincidence that your car broke down precisely on the road that leads to my property." He turned to face them, his bright eyes fixed on each of them. Jack Mercer, ex-military dishonorably discharged for abuse of authority. Tim Walker, wasted talent, brilliant university student who abandoned his studies due to gambling debts. And Ryan Oakes, accountant who falsified records to cover diversions in the family business, causing its bankruptcy. The silence that followed was dense, charged with the discomfort of those who feel exposed. "Have you been investigating us?" Tim managed to articulate. "I've been waiting for you," corrected Mr. Vance, rising again. "And now that you're here, we begin a game, my game, with my rules." He approached a panel on the wall and pressed a series of buttons. The basement lights changed to a more subdued tone, almost intimate. "From this moment on, you're under my tutelage. You won't be able to leave this property until I decide. Don't worry about the police. I've made sure no one looks for you here." "And if we refuse to play?" challenged Jack, his hand unconsciously searching for a weapon he no longer had. "Mr." Vance smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You don't have that option. But I offer you something better than immediate freedom. I offer you redemption." That word, redemption, floated in the basement air while the three men tried to understand the magnitude of what they were facing. This wasn't a simple, lonely old man, but someone with resources, information, and apparently a purpose for them. "Rest tonight," concluded Mr. Vance, heading toward the stairs. "Tomorrow, your true learning will begin. And remember, in my house, my rules." Morning arrived with the first rays of sun filtering through small openings in the sealed shutters. Tim was the first to wake, disoriented for a few moments until the memories of the previous night returned with overwhelming clarity. He sat up abruptly on the couch where he had spent the night, observing the room with new eyes. What the night before seemed a rustic and simple house now revealed subtle details of sophistication. Almost imperceptible motion sensors in the corners, the unusual thickness of the window frames that surely concealed security mechanisms, the strategic arrangement of furniture that eliminated blind spots. Jack slept in a nearby armchair, his heavy breathing betraying a restless sleep. Ryan was nowhere to be seen. The aroma of freshly made coffee and hot pancakes came from the kitchen. Tim followed the smell, finding Mr. Vance smiled with serenity. "Because despite everything I've said, I'm not your jailer. You're free to leave if you really wish. But if you do, you'll lose the only chance you'll have to clear your names and recover your lives." Minutes later, a municipal police patrol car stopped in front of the house. An officer with a good-natured appearance got out of the vehicle, adjusting his belt with some difficulty. Mr. Vance and Ryan went out to the porch to receive him. "Mr. Vance, good morning," greeted the officer with familiarity. "I was just passing by to see that everything was in order. We saw an abandoned vehicle on the highway, and we're checking the nearby houses." "Everything in perfect order, Officer Mitchell," replied the old man naturally. "These are my nephews, who came to visit me from the city. Their car did break down, but they're already organizing how to repair it." The officer observed Ryan with some curiosity, but nodded, apparently satisfied with the explanation. "If you need help towing the vehicle, you can call us at the station." After exchanging a few more words, the officer said goodbye and returned to his patrol car. Ryan watched him leave, feeling a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. "Why didn't you tell him the truth?" he asked Mr. Vance when the vehicle was no longer visible. "Because the truth, at this moment, wouldn't serve you at all," replied the old man. "You need time to understand what you really want to do with your lives." When Jack and Tim returned from the garden, Mr. Vance gathered them again in the living room. "This afternoon, each of you will have an individual task, an exercise. In reflection, let's say. Meanwhile, you can move freely around the house and grounds. The doors are open. Jack, skeptical, approached the main door and turned the knob. Indeed, the door opened, revealing the mountainous landscape and the path that led to town. "That simple?" he asked, distrustful. "That simple," confirmed Mr. Vance. "You can leave right now if you wish. The police are no longer actively looking. For you, I took care of that. But if you decide to stay, it will be under my conditions, participating in what I propose." The three men exchanged glances. The freedom they had longed for was literally a few steps away, and yet none of them made any movement toward the door. Curiosity, confusion, and perhaps a glimmer of hope kept them anchored to that strange house and its enigmatic owner. During the following days, the house on the hill became a peculiar laboratory of consciences. Mr. Vance, with the precision of an emotional surgeon, began to work individually with each of his guests, creating situations specifically designed to confront them with the consequences of their past actions. For Tim, the first test came in the form of a letter. Mr. Vance called him to his private study, a bright room with large windows that offered a panoramic view of the valley. "This arrived for you this morning," he said, handing him a sealed envelope. "A messenger from town brought it." Tim took the envelope with trembling hands. His name was written in an elegant calligraphy that he recognized immediately. Upon opening it, he found a letter from his former mathematics professor, apparently responding to a previous communication. "Dear Tim," the letter began, "I'm extremely happy to hear from you after so long. Your sincere apology has meant more to me than you can imagine. I always knew there was great potential in you beyond your mistakes." Tim looked up, confused. "I didn't write her any letter." "I did in your name," admitted Mr. Vance without a trace of regret. "You needed to see her response. You needed to understand that the doors you thought forever closed are sometimes just waiting for you to push again." The young man returned to the letter, reading about how his professor offered him help to resume his studies, even mentioning a scholarship program for students seeking a second chance. "Why are you doing this?" asked Tim, his voice broken by contradictory emotions. "Because sometimes we need a bridge to cross from who we were to who we could be," replied Mr. Vance, pointing to a desk where there were paper and pen. "Now you have the opportunity to write to her yourself, in your own words. The truth this time." For Ryan, the test was more direct and painful. Mr. Vance took him to town in his old Jeep, stopping in front of a modest nursing home. Without need for words, Ryan immediately understood. "I can't face him," he murmured, feeling panic taking over him. "Not after what I did." "It's not about what you can do, but what you must do," replied Mr. Vance firmly. "He deserves an explanation, and you need to give it to him." The visit was brief but intense. His uncle, now a shadow of the vigorous businessman he once was, received him with a mixture of surprise and sadness. There were no recriminations, only an expectant silence that Ryan had to fill with painful truths about the bad decisions that led to the bankruptcy of the family business. Upon returning to the house, Ryan remained silent for hours, sitting on the porch, his gaze lost on the horizon. When he finally spoke, it was to ask Mr. Vance for paper and pencil. "I need to make calculations," he explained. "I think there's a way to recover at least part of my uncle's patrimony." Jack proved to be the most resistant. After observing the gradual changes in his companions, his attitude became more defensive and hostile. One afternoon, while Mr. Vance worked in his garden, Jack confronted him directly. "What's your real game, old man?" he spat, standing threateningly close. "What do you gain from all this?" Mr. Vance continued pulling weeds with methodical calm. "Redemption," he replied simply. "Not yours or theirs. Mine." That unexpected response momentarily disarmed Jack. Mr. Vance took advantage of his confusion to continue. 25 years ago, I was in a position similar to yours. A trained man following orders without questioning, causing pain that I justified as necessary." He slowly stood up, directly confronting Jack's gaze. "Until one day, an operation went wrong. Very wrong. Innocent people were hurt because I trusted incorrect information and acted hastily. Lives destroyed by my arrogance. For the first time since they arrived, Mr. Vance's mask of serene authority cracked, revealing the underlying pain. I spent the next 5 years searching for each of those people, trying to repair the damage caused. For some it was too late. For others, my help meant little compared to what they had lost. But in the process, I discovered that true redemption isn't in erasing the past, but in using that darkness to illuminate a new path. Jack unconsciously stepped back, impacted by the intensity of that confession. And now what? Are we your charity project? You are my mirror, corrected Mr. Vance. In each of you I see fragments of who I was, and perhaps by helping you find your way, I'll finally complete mine. That night during dinner, the atmosphere in the house had subtly changed. Ryan shared with the others his ideas for a financial reconstruction plan that could help his uncle. Tim timidly mentioned the possibility of contacting the university to explore readmission options. Jack, although still reserved, listened with genuine attention. Mr. Vance observed the scene with contained satisfaction when a noise outside caught his attention. He discreetly stood up and approached the window, visibly tensing upon identifying the lights of several vehicles approaching along the dirt road. "We have company," he announced in a neutral voice, "and it's not Officer Mitchell's usual visit." The 3 men immediately became alert. Mr. Vance quickly led them to the basement, activating the hidden mechanism in the library. Once downstairs, he headed to the monitors, enlarging the images from the exterior cameras. 3 private vehicles had stopped at some distance from the house. From them descended 5 men, led by a figure that Jack recognized immediately. "It's Carrington," he murmured, visibly paling, "the moneylender from Eastwood." "It seems he's found his debtors," commented Mr. Vance, observing how the men strategically deployed around the property. "And he didn't just come to talk." Tim began showing signs of panic. "What do we do now? That man is dangerous." Mr. Vance remained imperturbable, meticulously reviewing the screens. "This isn't the first time my sanctuary has faced threats," he affirmed with unsettling calm. "We have options." He turned toward the 3, studying their faces with analytical intensity. "This is your final test. The decision you make now will define who you really are. You can hide down here while I handle the situation. You can try to escape through the tunnel that leads to the creek a half-mile away. Or you can face this together, as men who are willing to take responsibility for their actions." Jack, surprisingly, was the first to speak. "Carrington is my problem. I was the one who threatened him. I won't let you pay for my mistakes." "If you go out alone, they'll outnumber you," Ryan observed pragmatically. The 3 exchanged glances, reaching a silent understanding that would have been unthinkable days ago. "We'll go out together," decided Tim, with a new firmness in his voice. "But we need a plan." Mr. Vance smiled slightly, a flash of pride in his eyes. "Then we'd better start preparing," he said, heading toward a section of the basement where he kept non-lethal personal defense equipment, pepper spray, electroshock devices, and light vests. "In my time, I specialized in conflict resolution without bloodshed," he explained as he distributed the equipment. "I'll teach you how to neutralize a threat without becoming what you're fighting against." During the next hour, Mr. Vance quickly instructed them in basic defense techniques and negotiation strategies. His experience as a former security professional was evident in every precise piece of advice. In every movement he demonstrated with surprising agility for his age. "Remember," he emphasized as they prepared to go up, "our objective isn't to defeat these men, but to defuse the situation. Carrington feels threatened and seeks to reaffirm his power. Give him a dignified exit and he'll agree to withdraw." Ryan, adjusting his vest, asked what they were all thinking. "And if he doesn't?" Mr. Vance checked a last device on his wrist, something that looked like a watch but clearly had another function. "Then we'll move to Plan B," he replied with an enigmatic smile. "In my house, my rules, and my rules don't allow violence from either side." Night had completely fallen over the house on the hill, enveloping the landscape in a mantle of darkness barely interrupted by the faint moonlight. The shadows of the 5 men, led by Carrington, moved stealthily among the trees, approaching the property with the confidence of those who have the numerical advantage. From the illuminated porch, Mr. Vance watched calmly, seated in a rocking chair, as if enjoying a peaceful evening. At his side, Jack remained standing, tense but determined. Ryan and Tim had positioned themselves strategically in less visible points, following the precise instructions they had received minutes before. "Welcome to my home, gentlemen," called Mr. Vance when the intruders were at an audible distance. His voice, firm and clear, cut through the night silence. "I suggest you approach by the main path. The coyote traps in the underbrush can be quite unpleasant." The statement, said with such naturalness, caused the men to momentarily halt, exchanging looks of uncertainty. Finally, a man of robust build, dressed in expensive but ostentatious clothes, emerged into the porch light. Frank Carrington, the moneylender, advanced with a firm step, flanked by two of his men while the other two maintained their position in the rear. "Some hospitality, old man," commented Carrington with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just looking for old friends who forgot to say goodbye properly." His gaze fixed on Jack, instantly hardening. "There you are, Mercer. You've made me travel a long way." "Carrington," responded Jack with a calm that surprised even Mr. Vance, "this can be resolved in a civilized manner." The moneylender let out a harsh laugh. "Civilized? Like when you threatened me in front of my own employees? Like when you... And your little friends disappeared with my money?" Mr. Vance rose slowly, radiating a quiet authority that captured the attention of all present. "Mr. Carrington, allow me to introduce myself. I am Edward Vance." "I don't care." "Who you are, old man?" interrupted Carrington with disdain. "This is between Mercer and me." "I'm afraid it's not that simple," continued Mr. Vance, descending the porch steps with deliberate movements. "You see, these men are under my protection now, and in my house we have rules." Something in the way he pronounced those words made even Carrington's bodyguards pay attention. There was no explicit threat, but the absolute certainty in his tone was more disturbing than any bravado. "Protection?" repeated Carrington, studying the old man with renewed interest. "What are you? Some kind of priest who shelters sinners?" "Something like that," responded Mr. Vance with a slight smile. "Let's say I specialize in second chances, and these men have proven they deserve it." As he spoke, Ryan emerged silently from the shadows, positioning himself next to Jack. Tim did the same seconds later, completing the formation that faced the unwelcome visitors. "Mr. Carrington," Ryan intervened in a professional tone, "I have a proposal to settle the pending debt with compensatory interest." He extracted an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Carrington. The moneylender opened it with suspicion, examining the contained documents with growing interest. "This is unexpected," he murmured, reviewing what appeared to be financial certificates and a detailed payment plan. "It's legitimate," assured Ryan. "As you can see, not only will you recover your money, but you'll obtain a return superior to what you would have gotten through conventional methods." While Carrington evaluated the documentation, Mr. Vance took an imperceptible step backward, activating with a subtle movement the device on his wrist. In silent response, small lights sequentially lit up around the perimeter where they stood, revealing strategically located motion sensors. "Impressive proposal," Carrington finally admitted, storing the documents. "But what guarantee do I have that you'll comply?" "My word," replied Mr. Vance with such conviction that Carrington looked him directly in the eyes, trying to decipher this strange old man. "And if that's not enough, I have contacts who can serve as guarantors. Contacts that surprisingly include people from your social circle, Mr. Carrington." The moneylender narrowed his eyes, clearly intrigued. "Who are you really, Vance?" "A man with a past like all of us," he replied enigmatically. "A past that includes services to personalities you would immediately recognize. Personalities who prefer to maintain discretion about certain financial matters." The insinuation floated in the air like a subtle mist. Carrington, a man accustomed to moving at the limits of legality, perfectly captured the implicit message. A tense silence settled while the moneylender weighed his options. Finally, with a resigned gesture, he signaled his men to retreat. "I accept Oakes's proposal," he declared, addressing Ryan. "But if you fail on a single payment..." "We won't," interrupted Jack firmly. Each will assume his part of the responsibility. Carrington studied him with evident surprise. The Jack Mercer he remembered, arrogant and impulsive, seemed to have been replaced by a measured and resolute man. "You've gone soft, Mercer," he commented with some mockery. "On the contrary," responded Jack. "For the first time I'm facing my problems instead of running from them." Something in that response seemed to resonate with Carrington, who nodded slightly before turning around. "So I'll be expecting the first payment," he warned as a farewell, as he and his men returned to their vehicles. The four men observed in silence how the lights of the automobiles moved away along the winding road until they disappeared in the distance. Only then did the tension leave their bodies. "We did it," murmured Tim, incredulous. "It really worked." "Of course it worked," confirmed Mr. Vance naturally. "Most conflicts can be resolved when a dignified exit is offered to all parties." Carrington needed to assert his power, but also recover his money. We gave him both. They returned to the interior of the house, where Mr. Vance served 4 glasses of aged whiskey. He raised his in a silent toast, which the others corresponded, with a new complicity. "So what's next now?" asked Ryan after savoring the first sip. "That," replied Mr. Vance, "depends entirely on you." The next morning, breakfast took place in an atmosphere of strange normality, as if the events of the last few weeks had simply been a prelude to this moment of shared clarity. "I've been thinking," began Tim, distractedly stirring his coffee, "about accepting my professor's offer, going back to the university, finishing my degree." "I think it's an excellent decision," approved Mr. Vance. "Your mathematical abilities are exceptional. It would be a waste not to develop them." "I need to visit my uncle regularly," added Ryan. "Not just for the financial plan, but because I miss him. He was more than my boss or my relative. He was my mentor." Jack, who had remained thoughtful during most of the morning, finally spoke. "I've contacted Michael Duran. I offered him a formal apology and proposed helping in his store on weekends. It's not much, but it's a start." Mr. Vance nodded with approval, a slight smile illuminating his face. "Redemption isn't a destination, but a path," he observed. "And you've already taken the first steps." After breakfast, the 3 men prepared their few belongings. The time had come to depart, to return to the world with a transformed perspective. Mr. Vance accompanied them to the porch, where the morning sun bathed the landscape in an almost symbolic light. "What will you do now?" asked Tim as they said goodbye. "Wait for other projects to appear at your door?" Mr. Vance contemplated the question, his gaze scanning the mountainous horizon. "Perhaps. Or maybe it's time to take my lessons beyond this hill." "You could write a book," suggested Ryan. "Your methods are unconventional but effective." "A book," repeated Mr. Vance, considering the idea. "Maybe, although some lessons must be lived, not read." They said goodbye with sincere embraces, promises to stay in touch, and the shared certainty that those days in the house on the hill had marked a before and after in their lives. As he watched Mr. Vance's old Jeep move away down the path with the 3 men aboard, he would drive them to the bus station in town, the old man remained on the porch, feeling a deep satisfaction, but also a renewed restlessness. 20 years of retirement had served to heal old wounds, but perhaps it was time to expand his mission. He returned inside the house, heading directly to his study. On the desk rested a folder with files of other people whose paths had twisted, lost souls who, like Jack, Tim, and Ryan, needed guidance to find their redemption. Mr. Vance took a seat, opened the folder, and began reading the first file. His eyes, still penetrating and alert despite his age, shone with renewed determination. The house on the hill would continue to be a sanctuary of second chances, a place where people could face their demons and emerge transformed. Outside, the sun reached its zenith, illuminating every corner of the property. The shadows of the past temporarily vanished, but Edward Vance knew better than anyone that true redemption didn't consist of erasing them, but learning to walk alongside them, allowing them to guide the way toward a more authentic light. And, as he contemplated the future of new souls to save, the guardian of the house on the hill smiled, knowing that his own redemption continued with each life he helped rebuild. Dear listeners, We hope that the story of Mr. Vance and his 3 unexpected guests has resonated in your hearts. Sometimes, our greatest mistakes can become the path to our redemption if we have the courage to face them. If this narrative about second chances and personal transformation has moved you, we've prepared a special collection of equally captivating stories about people facing their own demons and finding redemption. Find it by clicking on the link to your left. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications about new stories that will explore the deepest corners of the human soul. Leave your likes if you've enjoyed this emotional journey through the house on the hill, and share in the comments if you've ever experienced a significant personal transformation in your lives. Your story could inspire our next tale. We'll see you tomorrow with a new adventure that will challenge your perception of what forgiveness truly means.